after Japan surrendered, British decided to do BMA. And they did BMA because they wanted to, number one, bring back peace and stability to Tanah Melayu, and number two, to get the trust of the people that they are better than Japan. However, they failed in both of these aspects because they couldn't get everyone to return their weapons that they used during World War II. They also couldn't recover the economy of Tanah Melayu because it was way too bad. And number three is that they couldn't even bring the technology back to from Britain to Tanah Melayu to try and recover the economy. So long story short, BMA failed. Because of this, they decided to do Malayan Union, and Malayan Union is a way for British to take over Tanah Melayu as a whole, because back then they were all separated into NNMB, NNMTB, and also NNS. So they made a unit to discuss about this, and then they discussed it in Parliament, and some people, PPPM, Persatuan Pelajar Melayu Britain, they sent a memorandum telling the British to not use jus soli as their way to have a citizenship. And that's because jus soli is based on where you are born, and they didn't agree with that jus soli. So they didn't want people to be immediately Malayan because they are born in Tanah Melayu. And then Tan Cheng Lock and Persatuan Cina Seberang also sent their own memorandum, but they just went along with it, and then came out Kertas Putih 6274, which, a long story short, says that British will take over Tanah Melayu completely and everything will be under one rule, a kesatuan, a union under British. So what are the characteristics of Malayan Union? Number one is, compared to Malaysia today, which is a persekutuan, a coalition, Malayan Union was a union, a kesatuan, which means that instead of multiple states with their own government under one complete country with its own with general government, there was just one government, British. That was it. Next, Raja-Raja Melayu were only part of Ahli Majlis Sultan. It's Sultan, and they only discuss about Islam and Adat Melayu, which is, compared to back then, very little power. And number three, the Malayan Union was led by the governor, and any government bodies in Malayan Union were under Pesuruhjaya Tinggi. So how about the ciri-ciri of its kewarganegaraan? Number one, they went along with jus soli, which is, remember, part of remember, they are immediately orang Tanah Melayu when they are born there. So people disagreed with that. However, there were a few restrictions. So number one is no restrictions, a few extras. Number one, if you are 18 years or above and you are born in somewhere else, but you came here and lived for more than 10 years, you will become a citizen. And number two is, if you are less than 18 years old but your parents are both from Tanah Melayu, you will also get citizenship. So how did British make a Malayan Union a reality? Well, long story short, they sent Willen to make people sign, to convince the Sultan to sign the agreement, and then Sir Harold McMichael came and realized that Willen did a bad job at doing that, so he forced all of the Sultan to sign. He forced all of them, maksa semua Sultan untuk menandatangani perjanjian. Maybe not all, because it mentioned that these two did not really dipaksa, but everyone else here is all forced. So what were the reactions? They were obviously not happy about this because, number one, Sultan Melayu have completely lost their powers. They only have power in Islam and Adat Melayu now. Number two is, back then some of the states were naungan, protected, but now they are jajahan, colony, so which is worse than naungan lah. So they were mad, and this proved that this Malayan Union is a way for British to completely take over Tanah Melayu. So how did they oppose this? Number one is they complained to the people in London. Number two is they tried and bring this to court, but both failed. Number three is they supported the Congress. That will be mentioned later. Number four is the Queen of Perak helped with protests. And number five is they completely ignored Sir Edward Gen being chosen as the governor. They being elected as a governor. So how did the people oppose Malayan Union? Number one is they made a few newspapers such as Utusan Melayu, Majlis, and Warta Negara. I don't know if they made it before that, but what I know is that they were basically telling people to go against British, and this is and say that Malay Union is a very bad idea and they should go against it. Number two is very famous leaders of Tanah Melayu like Dato' On Jafar, Dato' Nik Ahmad Kamil, Zakbar, and even Tunku Abdul Rahman. They were completely against Malay Union. Number three, not number three. Also mentioned is how even like very powerful women were also going against. Some of them were most of them being teachers. And then number three is some of these persatuans, these coalitions, these groups, they were formed or they were reformed when Malay Union was announced because they wanted to go against Malay Union. They made these like groups to organize protests, to organize like ways to try and go against Malay Union. Number four is they do make some protests in Kelantan, Kedah, and Johor. Number five is they had a congress, and in the first congress they decided to make UMNO. The first congress was held in Bangunan Club Sultan Sulaiman, Kampung Baru, Kuala Lumpur. And they agreed to make UMNO. In the second congress in Johor Bahru, they agreed to they officially created UMNO, and they told all of the Malays to fight against Malay Union. And when Malay Union was officially done, the first day Malay Union became a thing, it was considered as Hari Kematian, as a day of mourning, because the Orang Melayu and the Sultan Melayu all lost their powers. Next, UMNO made organized a few protests in Arosta, Ipoh, Seremban, Pulau Pinang, Kuala Lumpur, and Klang. And this because they wanted to convince the people who are coming, Gammons and Rhys Williams, that they are not happy with Malay Union. So how about Sarawak? Because Sarawak also had a situation where they had BMA. So after Japan surrendered, they had BMA, and then but before BMA they had BBCAU. So BBCAU is basically Australia BMA, and remember that Sarawak was taken over by the Brooke family, James Brooke, then Charles Brooke, and then now Charles Viner Brooke. But Viner Brooke decided to give away Sarawak to British. British and Viner Brooke were different. Like Viner Brooke was taking over by himself. British. Even though he's from Britain, he is not under the British government. But Viner Brooke decided to give away Sarawak to British. And this made a lot of people angry because of reasons I'll mention later. But why did Viner Brooke give away Sarawak first? Number one, he didn't want to give his nephew the title, even because number one, he had no son. And number two, his nephew wants to keep Sarawak, and he doesn't want to. Number two, he had no money. Number three, British forced him to. And this is the process of how he gave away Sarawak to British. So firstly, he agreed with us. He signed an agreement, and then he sent his secretary to force the Orang Tempatan to agree, and then he then asked the people if they agree or not. So do they agree? No. Some of them did. Some of them don't even know what's going on. And again, this report was done again by Gammons and Rhys Williams. So after they got the results, they took it into consideration in the Majlis Negeri. However, the results were that more people agreed to give away Sarawak than to not give away Sarawak. So in the end, Sarawak was given away to British. So what were their reactions? How did they feel about this? Number one, most people were against it because Viner Brooke completely disobeyed Perlembagaan 1941, which mentions that Sarawakians should get the power eventually. However, this Viner Brooke giving power to British is the complete opposite of giving power to Sarawakians. Number two, Charles Brooke wants to continue this Brooke family rule over Sarawak. However, Viner Brooke ignored that and gave it away to British, which is not the Brooke family. Again, these people were against Sarawak because they were promised to get independence. However, this giving away to British is like going against that, their promise. Number three, the Gerald T. McBride, which was the secretary, he forced people to sign it, which is not fair. So how did they go against it? Number one is they had some meetings, and after they had the meetings, number two, they had those the meetings were to plan the demonstration. Number two is they did the demonstration. Number three is because British realized that most of the people who were against it were against giving away Sarawak were working for the government. So they made a rule saying that people who work for the government aren't allowed to speak against the government. So instead, the people resigned so they can fight against British. Number four, again, women were fighting as well, especially teachers, Cikgu Lily Eberwin, Hadasi Patuangkau Osman, and so on. And they were willing to fight alongside everyone else, even though most of the people who were fighting were mostly men, but women empowerment. Number five, they created Udusan Sarawak, which is basically a way for people to rant about British taking over Sarawak. Number six is PPM sent a letter to disagree with Sarawak given away, but they didn't care. Number seven, they made Rukun 13, which is a radical party comprising of Awang Ramli, Moshiri Sijek, and Bujang Suntong, and they asked Rosli Dobi to kill Douglas Stewart, which is the head of British in Sarawak. So after they killed the head of British in Sarawak, British got very angry. And British killed all four of them. And everyone else who was part of Rukun 13 went to prison. And every other group, every other persatuan was closed down. So in the end, their efforts failed, but it was a good sign to come for the future. How about the people that supported Sarawak? Some of them supported it because number one, it is an opportunity for them to recover their economy. Number two is it's an opportunity for the people to become smarter. And number three is more people can get jobs. Next is Sabah. So Sabah, same as the other two, they had BMA. And same as Sarawak, they were given to British. SBUB gave Sabah to British. Why? Number one, because British wanted Sabah. Number two, because they were already friends. SBUB and British were already close friends. Number three is SBUB had no money. So what is the reaction to this? Because Sabah is very diverse, it was very hard for everyone to stick together and become as one. However, there were some efforts. There were some persatuan like PAS, Barib, and also PKML, and they were led by leaders. And at first, they were only there to recover the economy, but slowly they became more political. They became more, we need to become independent. We need to do things by ourselves. And then British didn't like it, so they tried to weaken that by firstly, secretly giving people promotions so that they can work for British and not go against them, and also secondly to cause people to relocate to other countries, not other countries, other states or other countries, because they didn't want all of them to work together as a team to fight against the British. So this caused efforts to spread awareness among Sabahans to be very hard, and in the end, most Sabahans didn't even know what was happening. So British had no problem giving away. So in the end, British had no problem had no difficulties taking Sabah from SBUB. Again, they relocated everyone to different places because they didn't want everyone to be together and convince the people to fight against British. They wanted them to be separated so that it's harder for them to do so. They also didn't want British. They also didn't want Sabahans to work for the government because, for the same reasons, they didn't want the people to know that to go against British. They didn't want people to be smart enough to realize that they are being taken over by British and that they could do it themselves. They wanted people to I'm just saying the same thing again. Long story short, they don't want Sabahans to be smart enough to know that that British shouldn't be here. And the next factor was most people in Sabah assume that because British was taking over Sabah and they are bigger than SPUB, they have more opportunities to work for the government, and they have more opportunities to recover their economy. And because of this, most people didn't mind Sabah being given away to British. So yeah, long story short, most people from Sabah didn't care because they